What does it mean to be human? In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, humanity has been spread out amongst the stars for tens of thousands of years. Exposed to different worlds and experimenting with their own genetics, humanity has been forged and reforged on 1,000 different worlds. So after all this time, can you still really call these people human? Well, the Imperium answers with a resounding no, declaring them mutants. It spent a large part of the Great Crusade wiping these people out, yet it didn't exterminate all of them. Abhumans are the populations who are allowed to exist as sanctioned mutants. Effectively held across the Imperium as second-class citizens, they're abused and often enslaved. The Imperium officially recognizes 73 strains of Abhuman, but it lists 46 as extinct, and suggests a further 12 are also extinct. Which Abhuman people the remaining strains comprise is an object of constant debate within the Administratum. So here is every Abhuman we know of within the Imperium. There's no better example of prejudice Abhumans face in the Imperium than the Beastmen, or in High Gothic, Homo sapiens varietas. This is a widespread classification referring to humans who at some point in their ancestry merged with animal strains, possibly the result of genetic experimentation. These Abhumans tend to have cloven hooves and backward jointed legs, though Beastmen in truth come in a wide variety of subspecies, all of which are genetically stable. Due to this variety in their appearance, they have a variety of names: beasts, twists, or even degens. They used to be able to serve in the Imperial Guard, and were widely renowned for their ferocity, though they had a bad reputation for their interaction with other troops, being called unsanitary and rowdy by other soldiers. Most commonly though, Beastmen were deployed for suicide assaults, to spare the troops that the Imperial Guard considered more precious. Perhaps the most lingering stain on their reputation is a widely held belief that these Abhumans are somehow tainted by chaos. In the Guard, they would be forced to wear purity seals and devotional scripts in an attempt to ward off the ruinous powers that their fellow Imperials believed to hang over them. In the current Imperium, the Beastmen are in danger of losing their Abhuman status and being purged from the galaxy, having lost even their right to join the ranks of the Imperial Guard. This all seemingly stemmed from the aforementioned tainted by chaos belief. A great number of Beastmen do worship the Chaos Gods, but considering the Chaos Gods aren't threatening to genocide them and enslave them en masse to work in toxic gas mines, you have to wonder if this isn't a case of the Imperium creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. A complete opposite to the Beastmen are the Navigators. These Abhumans are a crucial part of the Imperium, for they possess a pineal eye, which is a third eye in the middle of their forehead. With this pineal eye, they can gaze into the currents of the warp, guiding a void ship through them like a skilled sailor. This supernatural ability is vital to the Imperium, for without it, warp travel would be practically impossible. Without warp travel, crossing the galaxy goes from months to millennia. Effectively controlling warp travel has allowed the Navigators to become immensely powerful, forming the Navis Nobilite, sometime in the dark age of technology. These are effectively noble houses dedicated to cultivating the Navigator gene, the gene responsible for the growth of this invaluable optic organ. This has, of course, led to the Navis Nobilite going full eugenic Habsburg. The Navis Nobilite effectively have breeding programs, with each house trying to cultivate their own unique variations of the Navigator gene. This is most Navigator houses' top priority, since an inability to produce new Navigators would bring any house to ruin. So they will go to great lengths to ensure they produce new Navigators. This desperate experimentation has led to extremely monstrous Navigators being produced. A few mutations Navigators have been known to exhibit are webbed limbs, scales, and many other more intense things. Owing to their immense power and the Imperium's utter reliance on them, frilly planetary nobles are obliged to hobnob with the 8-foot-tall flying lizard man with 3 eyes. In fact, said frilly noble better get on his knees and kiss that Navigator's feet, because if they don't, then that noble's trading fleet won't even be leaving the dock. More typical of an Abhuman's place in society are the Ogryns. treated relatively better than the lows of the Beastmen, yet nowhere near as well as the highs of the Navigators. Ogryns really are a great baseline for how the Imperium treats abhumans. The actual definition of what an Ogryn is another hotly debated topic within the halls of the Administratum. For the most part, they agree there's 7 different strains of Ogryn, though we know little about these distinct types. All these variants share some common traits. Ogryn are bigger than a space marine, just as strong, and about 1/10 as smart. Ogryns are extremely stupid, but this just makes them better soldiers in the eyes of the Imperium. For once an Ogryn has been indoctrinated into the Imperial Creed, they will have an unshakable faith in the Emperor, literally thinking he is watching them at all times. The Ogryns are most widely employed by the Imperial Guard, though the Mechanicus and other organizations do use Ogryn, chiefly as heavy-duty servitors. In the Guard, the Ogryn aren't raised like any other regiment. In fact, no abhumans are. Instead, abhumans are recruited from their worlds, same as any other guardsman, but then separated into units to be attached to other regiments. This could be because the Imperium fears that an abhuman regiment would have more cause to turn traitor than most. That being said, some pure abhuman regiments have been known to be raised, especially in times of desperation. These are not the only kind of Ogryn regiments though, for in times of desperation the Imperium will raise a fearsome, feral Ogryn regiment. There's a few planets dominated by Ogryns whose technological level is far too primitive to be of use to the wider Imperium. When faced with a threat that can only be quelled by the most vicious of assault troops, Imperial landers will descend to the surface of these planets and capture whole tribes of these primitive Ogryn, quickly manufacturing a host of simple but brutal melee weapons. These regiments are armed and pointed in the direction of the foe. Despite their crudeness, more than one Imperial world has been saved to the beat of feral Ogryn war drums. Regardless, any regiment is thankful to have an attachment of Ogryn in its ranks. In most regiments, Ogryn provides some much-needed muscle, holding back the enemy so the wimpier comrades can employ the good old Imperial Guard firepower. Ogryn who distinguish themselves in the Guard are given a special implant known as a biochemical Ogryn neural enhancement, aka Bone. These implants increase the Ogryn's intelligence and allow them to act as sergeants of Ogryn squads. Many in the Imperium believe Ogryns to be too dim to become psychers, but the opening of the Great Rift has proven this false. Cassia is the first Ogryn to display psychic abilities in the Imperium. This occurrence was accompanied by a rapid increase in intelligence, effectively making Cassia the smartest Ogryn in the Imperium. But don't tell that to Nork Dedog. Imagine, if you will, one of Tolkien's hobbits crossed with a piranha and then grew up in a rough neighborhood, and you might just end up with a ratling, also known as runtlings, stunties, maggots, or, among themselves, halflings. These abhumans really do not just look like hobbits, though their faces are far more, how do we say this, British. Rarely do they even reach 4 feet tall, yet what truly distinguishes a ratling is their seemingly genetic personality. Ratlings are lazy, hedonistic, loud, gregarious, and sexually promiscuous. The average ratling spends the entire day eating till they're sick, drinking an ocean's worth of alcohol, and finishing it off by sleeping with anything with a pulse in a 1 kilometer radius. Truly, we all aspire to be ratlings. You might be wondering, why does the Imperium tolerate these seemingly useless rotund stunties? For 2 key reasons, both vital to the Imperial Guard. Firstly, the Ratlings are naturally unmatched snipers. Sneaky, quick when they need to be, and able to shoot the wings off a fly at 20 clicks. Plus, due to their natural proclivity for skullduggery, Ratlings basically spend all their lives training to be master infiltrators and scouts. This also aids in what we think is their single most important duty, scourging and cooking. If you've served any time in the army, or know someone who has, they'll be the first to tell you that the most important thing to a soldier is a good meal, and Ratlings are expert gourmands. Pair this with their ability to smuggle a roast chicken in an ammo box, and you have a morale-boosting machine. Frankly, we think this is why Ratlings are really allowed in the Imperium. How else will the Imperial Guard get their dirty mags, smokes, and extra rations? While I'm sure plenty of backline heroes would object to the activities of Ratlings, they provide the grease that keeps the Astra Militarum marching on. The Squats. The kin. Homo sapien rotundus. The Squats go by many names. Let's set one thing straight first though. these are not the Votann. The Votann are the ancient computers worshipped by the kin, who make up the Leagues of Votann. The Leagues of Votann are effectively a bunch of mining corporations who rove the galaxy cracking planets like eggs to get to the minerals within.
Rock and stove!
In this video, we're talking about the kin, the actual people who were long ago once just humans. During the dark age of technology, the people who would become the kin were genetically altered, potentially into what was called the Men of Stone. This could mean the kin were one of the 3 integral pillars of humanity's golden age, likely designed to extract resources from the galaxy for humanity. Squats come in great variation, their bodies genetically tailored to aid them in their endless quest for materials. These genetic templates are called clone schemes. These clone schemes allow for little variation, but they ensure certain features are retained. Yet, all clone schemes share some commonality. All kin are squat, sturdy, and highly resilient, with an increased red and white blood cell count over an average human. In addition, all squats boast enhanced strength, and on top of this, whatever beneficial features their clone scheme dictates. This could be improved sight, scaly skin, or resistance to radiation. Whatever the task at hand requires, these freshly cloned kin emerge nearly full grown, and with a base knowledge of all the challenges ahead. This gives us a solid idea of how the kin were used during the dark age of technology. Legions of perfectly tailored workers emerging from clone vats, constructing the great works of humanity's golden age. The kin in the Imperium are widely known as squats, and when we look back at their high Gothic name, Rotundus, the Imperium's official classification for these people is simply short and fat. Needless to say, the squats do enjoy high status within the Imperium of Man. Squats appear throughout the Imperium and look much like their fellow kin, though it seems they're most numerous on Necromunda. For after the Horus Heresy, 12 clans of squats aided in the rebuilding of the world. These 12 clans were originally from the Confederation of Erlish. These kin became the founding members of the 12 Ironhead mining clans, who, by Necromunda standards, keep mostly to themselves. When they came to Necromunda, the kin brought their ancestor Kor, which now resides beneath the Anglish's clan Holdfast. Still having access to cloning technology, this Votann directs the genetic innovations of the kin on Necromunda, helping them to adapt to the ash wastes of the planet. The kin are more suited than most to prospect through the harsh wastes, though this often brings them into conflict with the other factions on Necromunda. The Warriors of Tohruk are a variant of the Ogryns, renowned for their sadistic and bloodthirsty nature. They were employed by the Night Lord legions during the Horus Heresy, specifically as shock troops against the Dark Angel's Legion. Due to them siding with the traitors during the Heresy, it is likely that this strain of Abhumans has been wiped out. Though, they're worth remarking on as they may very well have been the first Chaos Ogryns seen by the galaxy. The Gland Warriors are one of the rarest types of Abhuman in the Imperium, for they are Imperial made. Created by the Adeptus Mechanicus on the Forge world, Drantis III, these living weapons were made to combat the Tyrannid threat facing the world. The tech priests took several companies of the low-stock 23rd Imperial Guard, who had been sent to defend the world from this alien threat. These men were implanted with additional organs to enhance their muscle mass and pain tolerance, and to give them resistance to toxins. In addition, glands were also implanted that secreted combat drugs into the warriors' system. All these surgeries and drugs led to Gland Warriors being infamously unhinged, often dropping dead suddenly in battle from the strain. When employed by the Imperial Guard, Gland Warriors are purely set up for close combat, sporting a las pistol, combat knife, and a special kind of polearm known as a dueling glaive. The knowledge to make Gland Warriors is a closely guarded secret by a handful of tech priests, a group the Inquisition keeps a close eye on. Yet in times of desperation, whole regiments can be made into Gland Warriors. This spells doom for every guardsman who is forced to undergo the surgeries, for to be a Gland Warrior is to be condemned to die. The Afriel Strain are the Abhumans that show why Imperial-made Abhumans are so rare. The Afriel Strain are genetically engineered clones, using the genetics of the Imperium's greatest heroes, such as Macarius, in an attempt to create the perfect soldiers. The development of these Abhumans was ridden with controversy. It was essentially the 40k equivalent of MK Ultra. Yet, it did seemingly succeed. Afriel Strain are faster, stronger, and smarter than average humans. So why is this probably the first time you're hearing of them? Well, the Afriel Strain has luck so bad it makes the Lamenters look like Vegas high rollers. Plus, they're utterly despised by all other warriors within the Imperium, seeming to generate a supernatural aura of hatred towards them. Despite the early success on the field, these massive drawbacks doomed the Afriel Strain, with every regiment having met its destruction on the field. Yet, the mystery of the Afriel Strain goes deeper. Grab your tinfoil hats here, people. It is heavily implied that the Afriel Strain was made by Fabius Bile. For you see, Fabius Bile's sole goal in 40k has been to create his new, perfect men. So you can already see how the Afriel Strain may fit his modus operandi. How the Spider managed to infiltrate into this Imperial development operation is unclear. And, like we said, this is only implied, but this operation's secretive and dodge development would aid itself perfectly to his secret involvement. The other aspect that lends to this theory is the Afriel's bad luck. This combined with the aura of hatred is a telltale sign of something not quite right. A defect that Fabius Bile had a lot of trouble with in his earlier experiments. Let us know what you think of this theory in the comments down below. Longshanks are a broad classification of abhumans who come from low-gravity worlds. They have unnaturally long legs, similar to a giraffe. Along with this, they're bold and have very large eyes. Longshanks serve like every other abhuman in auxiliary units, and are renowned for their ability to cross difficult terrain with ease. Though, the incident that has forever marked the Longshanks in the minds of the 40k fans comes to us from the War of the Beast. Several Longshanks were enslaved on an Orc attack moon, which is essentially an Orc Death Star. This attack moon threatened Terra itself, so the Black Templars and a large number of other Imperial Fist successors were sent to destroy this Orc attack moon. The slaves naturally saw the Space Marines as their liberation and rushed to thank them, only for the Black Templars to burn every Longshank they found alive. Nightsiders, or Homo sapien tenebris, are humans who've evolved on worlds completely shrouded in darkness, such as Nostromo, the homeworld of the Night Lords. With Nightsiders being such a broad classification, there's no set list of mutations. Yet, we know some of the mutations Nightsiders exhibit, such as echolocation, sight in near total darkness, chemiluminescence, and heightened smell and hearing. Pelagers, or Homo sapien oceanus, are people who've evolved to live on worlds entirely covered by water. Around the same size as an Ogryn and covered in scales that can stop a sword, Pelagers are already frighteningly potent abhumans. Yet, that's not all. They can breathe in almost any liquid and survive immense pressure, one being able to easily traverse a lake of tar. There's no records of Pelagers being used in the Imperial Guard Auxiliary, but we have to imagine these abhumans are extremely useful, though likely just as rare. We know very little about the Amphi, save their homeworld Lampra, and that they can shapeshift. Despite this potent ability, the Amphi have likely been wiped from the galaxy, though with their ability to shapeshift there could be some Amphi out there, hiding away from the vengeful eyes of the witch hunters. We know little about the Thrix too. These abhumans sport deadly feathers and are very likely avian in nature, though it seems these abhumans may have also been wiped from the galaxy, having fallen out of favour with the Adeptus Administratum, which for abhumans usually leads to their eradication. Drepanes, like the Amphi and Thrix, are likely also extinct. They possess sickle-like heads and were relatively stable genetically and temperamentally. The Drepanes were only found on Zetium 4 and have no known Astra Militarum units. Yet another likely extinct strain of genetically stable abhuman is the Lazul. Clearly named for their distinctive blue skin, the Lazul inhabited Garganus Prime until they were seemingly wiped out by the order of the Adeptus Administratum. The Katara are a completely extinct species of abhuman. Encountered during the Great Crusade by the Emperor's Children Legion, the Katara were tall, extremely thin, and graceful people with sunken eyes. They had a fierce, honor-bound warrior culture, and a small system-wide empire in the Kenuit system. Their technology was highly sophisticated, and they built vast underground cities and tunnel systems. Though, curiously, their entire society was focused around honor duels. They would settle near every dispute in their society with these duels. After the Emperor's Children encountered the Katara, war quickly broke out between the two. The Katara only ever fought as individuals, lone warriors going out and engaging whole units of Astartes. clad in a shimmering scale plate, wielding leaf-bladed ceramic axes and plasma-tipped spears. Lone Katara cut down entire squads of Astartes, yet they refused to fight as an army, only ever coming in staggered lone assaults. After the Emperor's children pushed deep underground, the Katara offered the legionaries an honor duel to settle the dispute. The Katara champion, Hamaya, ultimately fell before the Astartes commander, Abhumans. As a result, the Katara began a ritual, for which YouTube monetization purposes will call a self-deletion ritual. Thus, the Katara were wiped from the galaxy. Yet, so great was the respect the Emperor's children felt for these peerless warriors, that they declared Katara was not to be resettled. Instead, it would be a mortuary world to forever commemorate these proud warriors. The veterans of the Katara campaign took up the weapons of the fallen Abhumans, training with them, revering them as relics. Though, in a final, ironic twist of fate, it is said that Abhumans died on Istvan III to one of his brothers wielding a Katara blade. Another completely extinct Abhuman strain is the Thugrock Goliaths. These Abhumans were highly prized in the Imperial Guard, hailing from the world of Thugrock Secundus. This strain was wiped out in M35. The Goliaths had developed a blood cult among their numbers, and they overthrew the world's masters in the name of the blood god. Imperial retribution, however, was swift, with the deployment of 6 Eversaur assassins. These killing machines wiped every Thugrock Goliath from the face of the planet. We don't really know what the Thugrock Goliaths looked like, but our next Abhuman may shed some light on that. After all, they do partially share the same name. Goliaths of House Goliath are walking slabs of muscle, able to surpass even a space marine in size. Goliaths are located solely in the world of Necromunda. Goliaths, though, are not born, but made by House Goliath. Birthed from amnio vats, freshly born Goliaths have a data slug driven into their cranium, gifting them with the baseline knowledge of Necromunda and making them stubbornly loyal. They are then put to work in the numerous foundries of Necromunda. Living an average of 10 years, Goliaths don't seem to need to eat, instead living entirely off growth stimulants. All this combines to make Goliaths insanely strong and tough, though they can be a little slow, both in terms of agility and mental capacity. Unable to reproduce, these vat-born Goliaths are entirely dependent on House Goliath's vats for their continued existence. Yet, those Goliaths born of the amneo vats are not the only type of Goliath. High-ranking members of House Goliath are known as Alpha Goliaths. Alphas are naturally gestated, though enhanced with the best of House Goliath's growth technology. There is also the lowest class of Goliath society, known as the Unborn. These are outsiders who undergo the Goliath's growth treatments later in life. Treated like prize cattle by the heads of House Goliath, the average Goliath leans into this with pride. They wear collars and chains to signify servitude, and don armor that shows off their rippling physique. In addition, most Goliaths wear their hair in some form of mohawk. Scalies are a strain of Abhuman found in the bowels of the Underhive. Rarely seen in other hives, but fairly common on Necromunda, these Abhumans are a giant mass of mutated muscle, covered in scales and extremely durable. There have been reports of Scalies regenerating entire severed limbs. Scalies are some of the most dangerous Abhumans in the Imperium. Seemingly fully intelligent, Scalies seldom speak and keep to themselves, making them a very mysterious Abhuman strain. Living in hidden tribes or clans, Scalies seem to gravitate to the most polluted areas of the Underhive. Unused by the Imperial Guard, Scalies on Necromunda are normally found in the employ of Scavvies. Scavvies are people who abandon the relative safety of working a factory job and make a living searching the Underhive for useful junk. The Neandor, or Homo sapien Hyenothus, are seemingly an evolutionary backstep. Apparently having limited language capabilities and being very stupid, Neandors only come from the world of Hyenoth 4. Now, we want to make it clear that our description of Neandors is extremely biased. It comes from a sneering imperialist rogue trader who believes all Beastmen should be wiped from existence for having poor table manners. He also ascribes the Neandors' de-evolved state to not having noblemen to oppress them. So really, do take this description of the Neandor with a pinch of salt. The Troth, or Homo sapien vedantus, possibly don't exist, as our only evidence of them comes from stories and rumors. Though what the tales tell is that the Troth are essentially tree people, with skin like bark and able to burrow into dirt and extract nutrients like a plant. If the Troth do exist, they're located solely on the world of Verdant, which also might not exist, as no one seems to know where it is. Alright, Now, the one lots of you have been waiting for. Felinids, or Homo sapiens hirsutus. We have two pieces of lore for the Felinids. The first is that their homeworld is called Carlos McConnell. The second is a description from a famous Kroot mercenary called Deak, who describes them as the greatest killers in the Astra Militarum, and having claws as long as a human forearm. Yet Deak is not a very reliable witness. The man basically thinks anything fighting alongside humans is human. So, we come to the age-old question of, what do Felinids look like? Are they furries, anime catgirls? Well, we're gonna propose two theories to you, and you let us know which one you like more. Our first theory is based on their name, Homo sapien hirsutus. Abhuman High Gothic names are usually derived from a feature of the Abhuman, or their homeworld. We can see Homo sapien hirsutus has nothing to do with their homeworld. Hirsutus is effectively Latin for hairy. This combined with the name Felinids invoking feline, meaning cat, plus to even be accepted by the Imperium, they would need to be fairly humanoid. This gives us some idea that Felinids should be, by all accounts, something akin to Tabaxi from D&D. This would usually fit what a lot of abhumans are in a meta sense, a way of bringing in classic fantasy races into 40k, Ratlings being halflings, Ogryns being ogres, kin being dwarfs. However, our other theory for the Felinids comes from how we'd make the classic idea of the more anime catgirls perpetuated by fans fit into the universe. Behold, couldn't you see these two Hellcats tearing through the hive of Necromunda alongside the gangs of House Escher? This design maintains the hirsutus element by giving them huge hair and evokes back to the classic units of Warhammer, like the Witch Elves. Now, it should be noted that we do have another theory, being that Felinids don't exist at all. In Liber Xenealogus, a slaver tries to sell a rogue trader a Felinid corpse, yet it's subsequently revealed that said corpse is simply a normal human body stitched together with animal hides. This is very reminiscent of stories around mermaids and other cryptids in the real world. The truth is, we don't know. Yet I think we are all eagerly awaiting the day we find out if these abhumans are myth or reality. Subs, or Homo sapiens deformum, are a catch-all term for multiple strains of stable abhuman. These are the downtrodden, those who live their lives in the very depths of a hive city. Considered too hideous for regular human society, subs are often enslaved and forced into the harshest living conditions in the Imperium, and despite their abhuman status, are subject to near constant ecclesiarchal purges. Their very name is short for subhuman. There's perhaps no better summary for the Imperium's intense discrimination towards abhumans than their treatment of the subs. What makes these even more tragic is that it's a core weakness of the Imperium that makes them more vulnerable to chaos. This immense oppression of subs is what causes them to turn to chaos. How many billions have died? How many worlds have fallen because of chaos cults formed out of a desperate struggle for survival for these oppressed people? Even some Imperials recognize this weakness, but frankly it seems too late. The Imperium's own hatred may have already spelled its destruction, as there's far more subs than any High Lords of Terror will ever know. While not abhumans by Imperial legal standards, mutants are still genetically altered humans, same as any other we've talked about in this list. Mutants come in all forms, and we're not going to cover all the variations in this video today. What we want to talk about is their legal status within the Imperium. Mutants have no rights, and are often actively hunted by zealots. You could gun down a mutant in the middle of an Imperial street and suffer no consequences. Yet still, the Imperium has teeming masses of mutants within its borders. Why? Slaves. To be a mutant in the Imperium is to justify your existence by toil. To slacken in your work for a moment is to invite a bullet in the back of your skull. Imagine the greatest cruelties of man, and know the mutants of the 41st millennium have suffered them tenfold. Yet, it gets darker still, for most mutants are a product of the Imperium's own cruelty. The horrific conditions of work in the Imperium causes its workers to mutate over generations of backbreaking labor and exposure to toxic chemicals. What were once average people are twisted into what the Imperium deems monsters. Yet, mutants are tougher, faster, and stronger than your average human, and often are the only people who can survive in these harsh environments. Yet, the Imperium still drives more and more of the poor and desperate into the these jobs, turning its own people into the very thing it despises. Mutants are forbidden from carrying arms, except in the most dire of circumstances, where they will be amassed into great militias of the faithful. Ecclesiarchal preachers will scream of how these mutants have been given a divine chance at redemption, to be forgiven for the sin of their birth, the chance to sacrifice their lives to obtain a sliver of the Emperor's forgiveness. During this video, we've covered a wide variety of abhumans of all shapes and sizes. We've seen how the Imperium deeply discriminates against some and uplifts others, usually those that can be of great use to them. Yet, every abhuman is a second-class citizen, always a few steps away from the complete eradication of their race. What we'd like you to think about is how the Imperium actually classifies what's an abhuman, something that differs from their idea of what it means to be human. Yet they worship the Astartes, beings further from base human than any Ogryn. Yet the simple fact is what the Imperium calls human is close-minded and arbitrary. In the background, you've probably noticed Cadians flying by. Well, there's something you might have noticed. Cadians have purple eyes. What happens one day if the Imperium declares purple eyes a mutation, an unacceptable deviance from the pure human form? With the bastion of Cadia now gone, who can really say? What happens when they decide your hair color or your nose shape is a sin? No one is safe in the Imperium of Man, for in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, there is only hate. Brothers and sisters of the Imperium, the creation of these chronicles demands time, toil, and no small measure of coin. Each patron who joins our cause does more than support. They become part of the very war engine that drives these tales forward. From humble initiates to exalted demon princes, our Patreon offers many tiers, each created with unique rewards and honors. And at the end of every podcast, we pay tribute to our most valiant supporters, those whose names are etched in digital glory. Join us, and together we shall keep the lore alive.